Welcome, everyone. You are listening to the Authority Podcast here on the B Podcast Network. Thanks, as always, for being with us. Pleased to have you here for this conversation, which will be a nice companion to our previous episode. And it'll dive a little further into topics around school culture, student behavior, and compassionate school communities. My guests are Charle Peck and Josh Stamper. Charle is the co-author, in addition to the book we're discussing today, she's also the co-author of a book called Improving School Mental Health, Thriving School Community Solution, a revolutionary program to optimize student learning outcomes and well-being. She holds an MS in education and an MS in social work, and is a 20-year veteran of K-12 education. Her unique lens as a high school teacher turned clinical therapist and her work with adolescents and families in crisis makes her stories relevant and captivating to those struggling in today's system. We hope to hear some of those today. And Josh is a dedicated educator, speaker, author, and creator of Aspire to Lead. With a rich background in teaching and school administration, he brings invaluable insight into the challenges and opportunities within the education system. His personal journey as a struggling student, combined with 9 years of experience as a middle school administrator, fuels his passion for creating supportive and transformative learning environments. Their book that they've co-authored, the focus of today's conversation, is called The Language of Behavior, a framework to elevate student success. It is winner of the 2025 Firebird Educational Book Award. And let's get into it. Charle and Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. We're so glad to be here.
Oh, it's great to see you again, Ross.
Yes, great to have you both. Great to see you, and excited to talk about this book. And as I kind of referenced a little bit in the intro there, I just had an episode with Dr. Bill Penuel, and he is co-author of a book called Creating Compassionate Change in School Communities. And your book also refers to a compassionate approach to school culture and student behavior. So would love to start by talking about that word, what it means to you, how it's foundational to your approach, right? And just like getting our listeners in the mindset, I think, for a lot of what we're going to talk here about today. Charle, would love to start with you, and Josh, you can certainly add to that.
Yeah, what a great word. Honestly, compassion just means we humanize people. We make them just realize that we're all in this together, just trying to get through life and find some joy and understand that we'll go through all the emotions, but we all experience that as humans. I mean, that's what we have in common. So we have to be compassionate about what's going on with them in the moment in order to, what we do, and we say this as a therapist all the time, is meet them where they are. And so compassion is really the foundation, truly, of any kind of way that we're going to engage with other people.
Definitely. And I would say that in addition to compassion is empathy with some of the things that we've written in the language of behavior, and really this lens of understanding what's truly going on underneath, because a lot of our students are coming in every single day and they're in survival mode. They're just trying to get through their day. Education is really not the top priority for them. And when we look at the word discipline, the root of it, it really means a disciple, someone that's learning. And unfortunately, through the discipline matrix or the procedures that are constructed in most traditional school settings, what we're seeing is that it's more about the punishment than actually looking at the restoration of what's going on and getting to the bottom of it, and then also teaching the appropriate behaviors that we want from our students. So we've got our 3 tenets that we've kind of constructed to help really find an easy way for our educators to have compassion, have empathy, and then also just some additional strategies that they can be proactive, but then also when students unfortunately do make mistakes, they have the tools to make sure that they're teaching the appropriate behavior moving forward.
So Josh, you've just done the relatively rare thing here. I mean, we have lots of tremendous guests with lots of great ideas, but it's not too often, I think, that somebody shares a simple concept that I've never thought about before. And the connection between discipline and the word disciple is one that I've never thought about before. So there you go. And would love to dive into that a little bit more. And I have, a note here. You write about some of the outdated disciplinary practices in schools, and now thinking about the connection, right, between that word and how it might connect to our outdated model of what the relationship between educator and student is, what the student's supposed to be, and how those practices then we would understand why they need to be updated based on updating that understanding, right? And so would love to spend a little more time on that. First, like I guess what should the understanding of those roles, educator, student, right? Teacher, disciple, and what should that be? And then how does that inform our understanding of disciplinary practices and why they're outdated, right? And that it's not simply a matter of just wanting to do things differently, I guess, right? Or just changing for the sake of change, but that the practices need to evolve with our evolved understanding of the people that are in schools and what they're there to do.
Charlie, you want to take that or you want me to take it?
Yeah, well, I know you'll have a good practical answer and then I'll follow up.
Okay, yeah. Well, so Ross, looking at the data, I mean, we have a ton of that, specifically in the beginning of our book in regards to looking at why what we usually have in our tool belt, which is what detentions and school suspension, out of school suspension, even expulsion, obviously for the higher level and alternative programs for those high level infractions. The discipline shows, and John Hattie's probably got the one that's comes to mind first, is just it looks at factors that are in the schools in regards to what can we do as educators to help increase learning. It's very simple as far as the data, and he's got a plus minus. Well, one of the worst ones that we do as educators, out of school suspension and expulsions for obvious reasons, right? If we're taking them out of the educational environment, of course, we're going to see a lack of learning. And the kids, unfortunately, that need our assistance and our support the most are the ones that are getting kicked out of classes left and right. And so for myself as an administrator, specifically a very young first year administrator, I was fed up. I was thinking I am not making a difference in the lives of my students. My discipline data was going up every single month, and really the relationship between my students and my teachers were only getting worse. The relationship between myself and the students were getting worse, and I kind of just threw up my hands and was like, I need to find something different. I need to do something that is creative, like you said, Ross, that is going to improve the relationship that I have, improve the idea of I want to go into this classroom or I want to go into this school, and then also that they're going to learn the appropriate things to move forward, not just to be successful in the classroom, but be successful adults. And I think that's where we were lacking, was we were just shoving them in a room or sending them out into the community. And what was happening was we just got this vicious cycle of our students making poor choices in the school, but then also not getting the skills that they needed. So then they were making mistakes out into the community. And of course, we know what that looks like if they're making, poor decisions in the community. And so police were involved. We had a lot of neighborhoods and apartment complexes that were upset with us because they're like, why are you sending your students out into the community and, having students make poor choices? So for myself, that was kind of looking at not only the data, but then also my own experience as an administrator, just feeling like a huge failure. Charlie, do you have any other concepts as far as like why traditional discipline's failing us?
Yeah, I mean, the simple reason is punishment isn't teaching them the skills they need to thrive. I
Mhm.
mean, they really need those. And I mean, we got to link it back to the adults. So educators are really struggling. I mean, we have a school mental health system that is in chaos. We're reactive. We're just so unstable there, and nobody seems to know exactly what to do. But everybody's trying. I will tell you, Josh, I mean, the people we work with, they're trying so hard. And so, Ross, I know the people that are listening would love practical skills and tools themselves. I mean, that's what people want. They want to walk away with that. That's why we wrote the 3 tenets framework, because
Mhm.
we're addressing that as a systemic issue to give tools and strategies. And so we talk about how, like, of course, behavior is communication. A lot of people already know that, but we try to say it, it's like, look at it like it's not threatening. It feels threatening. Trust me, I know it. I've been on that end of it as a teacher. But really, they're little people, they're little nervous systems sitting in your classroom, and they're not as skilled as we are. And actually, I will say too, a lot of teachers are not skilled the way they want to be. It's not just even that they need to be, because we've changed in education. Like, we don't know how to respond effectively to kids' needs. And so they're acting out, but we're acting out because we're dysregulated. I know firsthand, I was there. And so teachers are asking us to be equipped and not to be therapists. They don't need to be therapists. but they do need some more skills that they're asking for. And so what that will do is help with teacher retention problems that the system is seeing. So we don't have to always have the punitive approach. We actually have a better way of doing it. And then also it re-energizes teachers and it makes them confident. So anybody knows when you're confident, you just respond more effectively anyway. And kids know when you're not confident versus when you are. That firm voice versus that shaky voice goes a very long way. So
Mm.
those are just the practical ways we're addressing it, not only as a system, but looking at the human, going back to the compassion, really is about the human standing in front of all those kids too, struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. And to this point of behavior as a form of communication, that relates to students, of course, relates to everybody, relates to parents, communities. And I'm thinking about the kind of macro picture and kind of understanding and responding to that first to create an environment where the individual behaviors can be responded to. So, for example, like what are school leaders doing to absorb and respond to and act on the behaviors and reactions and attitudes they're getting regarding the relevance of the learning that's being provided or the things that they should be communicating to parents and families about objectives that they have in their school programs they're investing in, why they're doing certain things. A lot of the things that teachers end up fielding, a lot of those agitations and complaints because nobody is out there talking about it, right? And then if those things are taken care of and that gives everybody a better starting point in their relationship to the learning, then can the teacher better attune to and respond to individual student behaviors, understanding, maybe having a better understanding of what might be the causal factors, what are some of the responses and interventions or just relationship building techniques, et cetera, that can improve them if we are kind of working in concert in that way. So Charlie, like having come from a role as a teacher, then a clinician, and then Josh is from the school leader perspective, maybe you can talk about those dynamics a little bit and the need for, you referenced, of course, the things that teachers are doing and can do, but I think it's really important that they not be left alone to do it, right? And it makes it unmanageable when you have a couple dozen different questions and thoughts and feelings coming your way, and nobody has gone about the context setting for what even are we attempting to do? What's the vision here? Are we designing, an environment that is built around students and their needs and their interests?
Yeah. And if you look at the whole community as a system and everyone's in it together, working together, that it is so powerful. That's when you're going to influence the positive school climate. But it does come from each individual having a willingness to get skilled, to understand, open their mind, to have that compassion and not point the finger. Probably most importantly, not point the finger and blame other people. Because the real change, as we all know, comes from within ourselves. It always goes back to that, no matter what. And parents are feeling it too. I mean, parents definitely could use some skills and they could shift perspective as well, but so could we. All of us can, even kids. I mean, we can give kids ownership too, but when we're all doing this thing together, that's when it's helpful. And so that environment really does drive behavior. They're seeing a system where we've been trying to give kids SEL skills for over 30 years now, since 1994. And those skills are so important. We have to keep following that model. But the problem is we haven't equipped the adults. So we keep telling the kids, we'll just go back into those stressful environments with those burned out teachers and those parents who are overwhelmed, but you need to function well. Well, they're seeing others not functioning well. So it's really tough, but systemically we can do it. We just have to work together. But I know it's a trust issue as well. So Josh will have some really great things to add here for
Yeah,
sure.
so Ross, as far as the admin lens, like we really did try to one make a decision based on the data, right? I already talked about like how our data was going up and up every single month. And a lot of times when we were looking at the referrals, it was real low level infractions that students were being sent out for, right? It was a disruption or disrespect. And so put it all on the teachers because obviously they needed support. But when we went to them and asked them, we found that the number one deterrent for them was time. they wanted to have that conversation with the student, but they also had 28 to 30 other students that were in the classroom that they also needed to tend to. And so they didn't want an audience. They wanted to have like one-on-one time. So one of the things that we wrote about in the book was this thing that we implemented, which was called the push-in model. And the push-in model was the opportunity for the teacher to have that one-on-one time with the student. So someone would relieve them when they called for a push-in. So they call the front office, and maybe it was a counselor or a coach, or it really could be anyone that is off. And we had a schedule for that. So they go in and relieve the teacher for 3 to 5 minutes and allow the teacher to go out with that student and just get really a bottom line of, hey, what's going on, right? There's something that's off, or they can give some specific examples, but really finding the underlying reason for the behavior. And it was so important because a lot of things happen. One, the student wasn't kicked out, right? There wasn't a fracture in that relationship. Two, they were getting time with that student to build more trust and a stronger relationship. But three, they were also getting an understanding and reconfirming the expectation about, are you going to follow the expectations to get back into the educational environment? And so by doing this push-in model, what we found was the teachers loved it, for one, but two, we were also getting a ton of time back into the classroom and way less time in either the front office or the ISS room. And so because of that, we saw a direct relationship, obviously, with grades, but then also our state testing. So we literally gave our teachers time, but we also gave our students thousands of minutes back into the classroom.
Yeah, I'll add to that too, because it really is that team approach is so critical. And Josh and I talk about this a lot. One of the first things that we address is the student referral process, because what we're finding is the teachers feel like they're completely alone. And loneliness underlies so many issues in mental health, not only with kids, but clearly with adults as well. I mean, it is so polarizing too. It feels you just don't function at your best. And so that student referral process, what happens is we learn to communicate, and the teacher learns to pass the kid off with people who are more skilled. And now the therapeutic or the school counselor, or the social worker, they can take care of those skills. But here's what I found when I was teaching. If I had a student that I was really concerned about, and I referred them, I sent an email or I verbalized it, I didn't know that anything was happening with them. I couldn't trust that anything was happening with them. So I didn't refer them. I took that on myself because there wasn't communication back. So strengthening that student referral process is huge, because the communication is good. The kids don't get lost. They go to the right people for help with the right skills, but then the teacher also participates. We just have to make it so easy to do so that they'll do it. But those kind of skills and tools have to be in place, just like looking at the environment inventory, for example. When we're working with teachers, we say, okay, let's do this checklist. What's going on in the environment that might be contributing to those behaviors that you're seeing? Or the relationship inventory that it was awesome. Josh came up with that. I love it. We use it all the time. So those tools are so tangible and
Yeah.
practical, but they've got to be used together.
Yeah, absolutely. And right. And as a collective, right? To know if I know what my job is and what I can do. I know that the next person knows what they should be doing, and we're all kind of trying to do this together. Nobody feels isolated or like I'm the only one who's attempting this, and I'm supported in it. If I'm a teacher, that when I'm use judgment to respond in the way that we feel is effective, that decision will be supported, that I'll maybe get help if needed, but also just have backup to say, yes, this is what we're supposed to be doing here, right? We're on the same page regarding what we believe discipline should be and shouldn't be, and we're trying to be effective with that. You've referenced the 3 tenets, so let's talk about those to make sure that we're filling the gaps here. Who wants to take? Josh, maybe you just give the list out of what the tenets
Yes.
are, and then we can dive in more specifically, but that'll sort of start to sketch out the framework.
Of course, I'll give the 3 tenets, and I'm going to have Charlie start with the first one because she does a brilliant job of working through that. But 3 tenets is consider your environment, exploring the breakdown, and the third one is responding intentionally. But I'll pass it off to Charlie as she's going to talk through the first one, consider your environment.
It's so important, right? As a therapist, I'm considering the biopsychosocial model, and environment is a huge piece that I look at. I always look at the kids as a little nervous system, like I always say to Josh. But the environment is going to elicit some feeling, some security or insecurity. And so we've got to consider our physical space and our social space. And so the physical space is the sensors, like what's going to make my sensory go off or be overstimulating. And so I might look around the room and think, wow, these walls have lots of great stuff on them, but it might be a little cluttered. It might actually overwhelm our kids, or the lighting, those kinds of things that we typically think about, or the space that we're in, we're setting up the desk. We always think of those things. But what about our social space? How are we positioning ourselves around our kids? Are we hovering? I mean, I always say, even with our 18-year-old students, we've got to get down to their level. They actually hate when we invade their space or hover over them. And they will respond very well if we just swing back a little bit, one step back, and get down to their level. Tone of voice, the way we look to them, if we consider what that might look like. And then sometimes, Ross, oh my gosh, these kids may be set off by something that happened at home or the day before. They're coming into your class, they hear a word, they smell a sound, smell a smell, hear a sound, or hear your tone of voice or a look on your face that just sets them off and they don't even know why. So there's so much to consider. And we say consider because we don't want to add more to the workload. We just want it to be a consideration so it doesn't feel so big.
So the second one is exploring the breakdown, and that's really looking more at communication and more so too, like non-verbally. And so, Ross, I'll give you an example. I got called on the radio to go to a classroom. There was maybe a minute left before the bell was about to ring. When I walked in, the student was sitting down and they were stiff as a board. I could see their fists were balled up, eyes were glossed over, and it looked like they were about to explode. I mean, you could see just red in their face. And so the teacher was going to go and talk to the student, and it just quickly, it just was like, just let's give it a minute. So the bell rang and all of the students exited. And thankfully, it was this teacher's off period, the next period. So no students were coming back into the classroom. And so I just literally just went through all of the things I listed off with her. And I said, what is that communicating to you? And she was a younger teacher. And so she didn't really have an answer. She just wanted to go and communicate more to the student, have that conversation. And I just had to let her know, like, hey, there's nothing going into this child's brain right now. Like, they are completely shut down, and it's going to take 30, 45 minutes before they get regulated to the point where we can actually have a conversation with them. And so that's really what that chapter is all about. And that tenet is exploring the breakdown, is really talking them through just how a lot of our students are, they've either had chronic stress or they've had trauma to the point where, what Charlie was talking about before, they had these triggers where they're just in survival mode and they just shut down. And sometimes it's not just a shutdown, but it's the fight, flight, or freeze mode. And our teachers a lot of times don't even get this training in their licensure programs to understand what the behavior equates to. And so when we're working with either at a conference or working with teachers at a school, like, we actually go through and work through, okay, if you see this, this is the mode that this child is. And we have to like decode the behaviors to understand where they're at. And so a lot of times we have to just give them space. But then also that teach piece, right? We talked about this with the word discipline, is making sure that we get them to understand the emotions that they're feeling too, because a lot of our kids are not equipped to know what the emotion is, how they're feeling, but then also how to regulate themselves. And so we have to teach that to our students also. And so a lot of times as an administrator, I was in that teach piece in the office with my students. And then the last one is responding intentionally, which is more about the restoration of poor behavior. Obviously, like I said, our kids are going to make mistakes every single day. Every day as an administrator, there was some behaviors that I had to work through, and it's that teach piece, but then also the restoration of what happened. So them understanding and taking ownership of what they did, who it affected, but then also repairing the harm and building that accountability. So sometimes people think of like words like restorative practices. They think, oh, they don't get any consequences. There's no punishment with that. And that's not true at all. It's just that it's hand in hand with that teach piece and that restoration of either a relationship, or maybe it's something that they broke, or maybe it's something else that needs to be restored. And so being creative in how we handle that and that process.
Like, what is accountability in this? Like, what does it look like? Who are the different people that are accountable, right? What, and because just as the students are going to make mistakes, I assume the adults are going to make mistakes, and right,
Yes.
nobody's perfect in how they are identifying causes or responding, or but also, so there's that, the self-compassion piece, and the, like, understanding that it kind of a growth mindset, right? Keep trying to get better, but not meaning that that doesn't detract from accountability to try to get it right and to, you know, correct mistakes same way, presumably, that you're working through with students. But yeah, how do you hold students accountable? How do you hold yourself accountable? So on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
as far as that goes, like everything. I mean, people, human beings are human beings, and so we're talking. And I think Charlie mentioned this before, and maybe this is what you're going to say, Charlie. But you know, the things that we're discussing are for all ages. Some of our teachers are going through some really tragic things. I mean, I can think of 100 different times when someone came into my office and told me about something just horrific that's going on in their lives. And as an administrator going in the classroom, I would have never understood that or knew that something was going on in their lives because they put a smile on their face, they made connections with their kids, and the kids were learning in the classroom. They're doing phenomenal things. But, you know, for myself, I needed to use the same practices with them to figure out what was going on in their world, what resources they needed, and then also have compassion and empathy as a leader to make sure that they could get through this tough time to get on the other side of it.
absolutely. And they will be accountable when they feel confident in your space,
Mhm.
that you've got their back, that you're not trying to judge them. I mean, that's one of the underlying problems we have is that polarization and the unfair judgment. It's okay to judge, but when we judge people unfairly and don't catch ourselves making the assumptions that are often just so wrong based on big fat lies, then it's hard to feel like we can be accountable. We just feel like we keep getting beaten down and unheard and invalidated, really. And that's not a good place to work from. I mean, that's not a good place to live from. So these kids will become accountable, and so will the adults that you work with and lead when you create that space for them to do that securely.
What do you do when the other adults are unaccountable? What's the,
Mm.
I mean, truly, right? If you're an individual in the building, you're trying to do all the things you're supposed to do, and you're not getting that mutual accountability or that support. Like, how do you navigate that?
From my perspective and my experience, it's going really closely linking to compassion because educators who are in buildings now, it is extremely rare to have somebody there who doesn't care about kids. Now, I'm not saying in the moment they're showing that they care, but they don't stay there. They don't, they're not staying in education because the system is working for them or their pay and all of that. They really do care about kids and change and helping kids get to where they need to be. And so if they're not being accountable, there's something there that they haven't worked out. There's someone in that system or something in the system that has let them down over and over and over. And so I think just trying to reach them and maybe not trying to fix them, just trying to say, listen, I don't really know what's going on. But again, I'm going to meet you where you are. You're doing this for a reason. If they're crossing lines with kids, absolutely not. We're not going to allow that. But it goes back to support and compassion. Like, how can I help you? What's going on? What do you need that can help you do your job better, that I can help you with?
Mhm.
Keep it
Yeah.
really simple.
Yeah, the key to behavior transformation for adults or for students, it's connection before correction. So we need to make sure that we're connecting with our adults, if we're talking about that, as far as our staff, to make sure that there's something else underlying, like we talked about, the language of behavior. I mean, our adults are no different. And so I can think of a staff member that was late consistently and had to have a crucial conversation with that person. And then unfortunately, we uncovered a ton of anxiety and mental health problems. And so for myself as a leader, I mean, I could have easily just started to write the teacher up and have more of a punitive approach to it. Instead, we started to look through, okay, what's some alternative things to make sure that this person's feeling safe, is getting the support they need with their mental health? And is that time off? Is that to go see a professional? I mean, there's a lot of things that we could do, but having that compassion, like we talked about, and making sure that that person is their best version to come and then support the kids. Because obviously, if this person's not getting the resources needed, I mean, either they're not going to show up or they're going to be kind of a hot mess in the classroom with our students, and neither of those options are great. So for myself as leader, obviously we made sure we got the support needed for the student, or I'm sorry, for the staff member, and thankfully it did get better. It was a valley for that person, and they were amazing in the classroom for the rest of the school year.
Are there any differences in what this may look like in practice across different, grade levels, ages? At the very least, between the two of you, you have middle school and high school experience, and so there's the, or I mean, is it really going to look pretty much the same? Are there things that might be more important or more, common to need to attend to as kids are a little younger, a little older?
It's just their developmental level. I mean, it is applicable across K through 12, and you work with new teachers who are going into buildings fresh too in the teacher programs. It is absolutely applicable, but you just change the language, right? If you're working with kids on any level, you just understand what their developmental skills and deficits are and cater to those needs and understand really the brain development. That's huge. Like one of the best things I ever did as a teacher was taught my adolescent students about how their brain is working. So we can teach that to kids too and just use the appropriate language. But also sharing that information with parents too. I mean, it's important to get them involved too, so we're all sharing the same common language. I know Josh will have some great information here too. What would you say, Josh?
No, and Charlie, we just had someone that reached out to us and is implementing this at a young elementary building, and they're saying that they're excited because it's working with that. But we've also got people in secondary also that have given us the same feedback. So I do think you have to tailor it to obviously like Charlie said, the development where they're at. I know some BOCES too in special education are using it. Obviously, there's a large level of abilities there too. And so it does require obviously the teacher or administrator to make sure that it's appropriate for the child and where they're at. All of these skills, it doesn't matter. I mean, these are all things like we're talking about emotional regulation. Well, it doesn't matter your age. That's a skill that you can use for your entire life. Restoring a relationship with someone, that's something that you can do. Even my 3-year-old at home, I'm starting to teach her that. So it really doesn't matter the age. It's a matter of the language that we're using to tailor to the appropriate level that they're at.
Are there any like common or just, significant important mistakes that you see made when educators are attempting to put this into action, or challenges that they come to you with and say, like, I think I'm doing this, but I'm still having this issue, or this continues to happen. What am I doing wrong?
I see it when people try to fix kids, when that's their approach is
Mhm.
just, I need to fix this kid, or shipping them off to the school counselor, for example, to say, fix this kid, or trying to take a power position over kids. We are an authority figure, absolutely. We're not saying that has to be diminished. But when we do try to engage through a power approach, then we're going to shut them down immediately. It just doesn't work. That doesn't work.
I think the quick fix, that I'm frustrated with these behaviors. I want it to change tomorrow. And this is something that we're investing in our kids. And sometimes, often, it's not something that we see until they're out of our building. I can think of many times that our high schoolers would come back and they were functioning so much better. They were successful. They had jobs and they were going to college and all these things. And it's like, I wish I had that version 3, 4 years ago when I had you, but it really took the time and all of the effort from the teachers, from the administrators, the counselors, and doing this work to see the benefit later. And that's the frustrating thing for a lot of our teachers, that they don't get to see the end product. And so they think they just kind of throw up their hands and go, oh, I guess it didn't work. Right. But no, it's things that for the long game. This is a marathon. And unfortunately, sometimes they want that 100-yard dash to get that finish line as quickly as possible. So I think just the frustration of time and not seeing the dividend right away. The other thing too is like when we're emotionally unregulated, or maybe it's a stressful situation, sometimes we default to what we experience as a child. And that's that traditional model. And sometimes we are inconsistent, which is extremely frustrating for the child who's on the other end of it. And so just trying to teach that consistency piece, and then also just the understanding that you can be creative. Like you're not bound to a discipline matrix. Like you have flexibility in the way that you're working with the child, and every kid's different. So mold it to what they are versus just having a standard set way of doing it for all students.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would think that as far as potential sources of resistance, one of them would be the difficulty of sometimes separating, like, what is from what we wish was, or something, right? Like the times when a teacher feels like, I wish I could just teach. like I have this thing that I want my kids to learn, and why can't I just do that right now and not have all these other things happening. And not because I don't care about having a positive influence on it, but because it just feels like there's always an additional thing that is drawing energy and attention away from the way I set my goals when I woke up this morning, right? Or what I believe the objectives were. And sometimes too, I mean, it does feel as though, in not exclusively in schools, although it certainly comes up in schools, but it comes up in all areas of development and communities, like a an inaccurate view of how things are now compared to how they supposedly used to be. And things like, well, how we this is how we used to do it in school, so we should do it that way. And like, that may not even necessarily be so, or it might be, well, yes, there were things that were neglected and overlooked, right? And that we kind of forget about what were the negative outcomes of not paying attention to certain things, right? When there was no intentional approach, maybe it felt easier, but what we've learned over time is that we're not okay with some of those outcomes, with students either not completing school or getting into trouble or having negative outcomes in other areas of their life, or having mental health difficulties that go unaddressed, right? But I guess, to kind of form it into a question, what can some of those conversations look like? Maybe it's an educator seeking out somebody to talk to and talk through those frustrations, right? Or just kind of wrap their head around, okay, right, I'm having this challenge here, and it really feels like it's making it difficult to accomplish this other thing, right? To your point, Josh, about we can't always see the end product. Like, you can't control what happened in the years prior to those kids getting into your classroom, right? You of course can't control all the things that are happening out of school, but you also can't control if they're behind academically when they get to your class, or if they are having other behavioral issues that have gone uncorrected and unaddressed, and you're having a starting point that feels more difficult than what you would have hoped for. Helping them to make as much progress as you possibly make doesn't necessarily mean that by the end of your time with them, you've accomplished everything that you wish would have been accomplished, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't really important. But I guess, how can educators support one another, seek out those conversations, right, for themselves, to kind of have the resilience and perseverance to make it through those difficult times when there's a lot of things that they're challenged by.
So, Ross, I'm going to talk about something that Charlie and I work with districts on, specifically at the school level, but something I used to implement, and really at every campus, was a relationship action team. And this group was a small group of individuals that came together exactly for what you're talking about. One, it was to learn about new strategies. Two was to implement, and three was to support others that were in that group. And it was always a small group to begin with, but we had some rules about the relationship action team. One, when you entered the door into the meeting, each meeting, you had to make sure that you left all your biases at the door, right? We always come with stuff through our experiences or things that we have as far as our belief system. And so we want to make sure that everyone had an open mind. Two was everything that we learned and that people brought to the meeting, we had to implement it in our classrooms. It was a safe space. You could fail at it or you could be successful. If it was successful, we wanted to make sure that you continue to implement it every single day within your classroom. And the last thing was, once it worked, we wanted you to share it out with a neighbor, a peer. And so our teachers did that often, where something was working, they would share it out to someone else, and then they would invite them to the relationship action team. So with every relationship action team that's been built, it always is a small group, but it ends with a very large group by the end of the school year. And the reason for that is our teachers are struggling. They want to know, okay, what are you doing in your classroom with Billy that I'm not doing, where you're seeing success and I'm not, right? And then that other piece is, I'm frustrated and I want to make sure that I'm in a community that's healthy and helping other folks. And so typically, I know from my own experience, it was usually more than half the staff by the end of the school year that was a part of this relationship action team. So it was really easy, as far as we're talking about campus culture, of shifting that campus culture to be open-minded, trying new things, and then keeping the things that are working for our teachers and our campus and our students, to then push it so that it's campus wide, because the majority of folks are within this mindset and the majority of folks are working and implementing these things.
Yeah. And it's like having the dream team, right? It's the team approach, then you're never doing anything alone. It's just never, we talked about that before. That loneliness is crucial. But also, that's why we need training to align to what education is now and in the future. It's just not the same. Everything's changing so rapidly. And so we've got to adapt to that. And the best thing one of the other best things I did, because I already said that about teaching kids about their own brains, is I chose to facilitate my classroom a little differently. Instead of just being up there teaching all the time, I facilitated the learning and I put a lot of it back on the kids. And the message to them was consistently, I believe in you. Like, you can do this. Let's figure this problem out. I got a lot of training in critical thinking, which was awesome because it helped me have the confidence to kind of flip it and say, look, here's the problem. How do you solve this? Now I got to teach about social issues and mental health and well-being and that kind of thing. But really, you can do this in any classroom. Put it as a problem that they need to solve and make it relevant to their lives and actually get them thinking about how they're going to engage in the world as they learn and grow. I mean, it makes sense. Like, we have to just shift how we're looking at education. And I'll tell you another thing here is we've got to also tell kids that we believe them. Like, when you have a good relationship with them, that not only do we believe in them, but we believe them when we're developing that trust, that I believe you. The way you're talking to me now, I believe you, because they need that validation when you do believe them. So there's a lot of trust building within the system as a whole.
So what's your, you know, hope and your vision for if this framework is implemented and used consistently for how it will shape what's to come in education, like, what school communities will observe in their outcomes, and what's the ultimate goal there?
I think we're going to create a place where kids actually want to be. We're going to retain teachers. People are going to truly thrive as a whole community together. That's the transformation. I know we can do it. We're seeing so many results already. It's truly one kid, one school, one community at a time. I know it's there, and there's tremendous hope for our future of education.
Yeah, I'd say the same as far as hope. I think a lot of our teachers are feeling pretty hopeless right now. I know it's the end of the school year and they've gone through a lot during that time span, but also just giving them permission to do things that are different than what they've done before. And with that, hopefully it's empowering them to then feel like they have the strategies to be successful. One, with the learning that's occurring, but then also to build stronger relationships and make sure that they're giving a student the abilities, the functions, the practices that they need to be better adults. And I think that's really what every teacher wants. I know, Ross, that most folks go into the profession because they're passionate about a subject matter, but we also want what's best for kids. That's the other component of being a teacher. And to have those strategies and those tools in our tool belt, obviously we're going to feel much better every single day going into that school building, knowing that we have the tools, the strategies, and the practices to make sure that kid is being changed.
Yeah. The two most common things that I have seen and heard come up repeatedly when it comes to teachers leaving their job or leaving the profession or poor leadership. That's always and I feel that I cannot be successful or effective. And certainly that all applies here in if I cannot overcome some of this, or I'm feeling like consistently we're not able to get to teaching and learning, or we're not having any kind of an organized plan around developing relationships, improving and addressing behaviors, like having kids ultimately exit school with knowledge and prepared for positive outcomes, right? Then why do it if it's not working? And so critically important for schools to have an approach here, for individual educators to have tools as well, and to all the things that facilitate effectiveness and make it possible to get to those, those higher level objectives. Listeners, we are going to put the link below to where you can find the book. And we also are going to put links below to the respective websites and other resources. Josh and Charlie, do you have anything else you'd like people to check out, either on your websites or any other projects?
I just think that if people want to start this conversation, a lot of people want to have a tangible resource. So if they get the book, we give you an opportunity to have a free book study kit if you'd like to start that conversation with a group of people who really want to take charge and make change and have case studies to look at and just talk about these strategies so they can implement it. So we'll put the link there too, but they can just get a free book study kit. It's got even emails to invite people. So, and the reflection questions and worksheets and a facilitator guide. It's all there available.
All right. So Charlie, your website's thrivingeducator.org. Mine is joshstamper.com. But if you go to joshstamper.com/language of behavior, that's where our podcast is held. And then we also have a bunch of free resources there. And then obviously the book, and then how we support school districts and school campuses. So all of the things that we do are also on that page. So if you're looking for a one-stop shop, you can go to either one of those websites to learn more about all the things that we do.
Excellent. We will put those links below, listeners, so you can visit those websites, check out all those resources, find the book, and continue your learning on this topic here. Find some practical ideas and resources that you can put into practice, and start where you are. Start with the thing that you're feeling challenged by right now and address that, and then build from there. I think is a really good place to start. So we'll put all of that where you can find it. Please also do subscribe to The Authority if you're not already. We'll have more interviews with authors coming your way weekly, or you can visit bpodcast.network to learn about all of our shows. Charlie and Josh, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.